I start my main talk here, just a word about my personal Yom HaShoah. Yesterday was Yom HaShoah, and in honor of it, my daughter Lori, who's spending 6 months in Israel, wrote a wonderful blog post that described our family's journey in the Shoah. She introduced my mother, who unfortunately has been gone a long, long time, but her memory remains, and it's incredible how many people responded. David isn't here today, but my mother was his second grade Hebrew teacher.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, thank you all for commenting, for passing it on, and so on. It was a wonderful experience. I spent much of the evening in my usual way crying because I didn't know how else to respond. As she ended her blog post, Am Yisrael Chai. We are here. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about Aliyah from Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Jewish community was rediscovered 40 or 50 years ago, started with a few brave souls who walked into Sudan from Ethiopia. A lot of discussion in Israel, were they Jews, weren't they Jews? Here was a community that had been separated for 1,500 years. They didn't celebrate Purim or Hanukkah, they didn't know they existed. In a landmark decision, the Israeli rabbinate finally concluded that they were Jews. And little by little, and sometimes more than little, they were all brought to Israel with the culmination, Operation Solomon. Some 15,000 of them were brought in a 4-day period during the civil war that was going on in Ethiopia. Left behind were thousands of people who claimed that they had Jewish ancestry. But they had been converted to Christianity in some cases 100 years before, but just like what had occurred in Spain and so many other places after the Inquisition, they continued to practice. This is the so-called Falashim, Falashmura. In 2012, the Israeli government decided that they should also be brought to Israel, not under the law of return, which specifies that one of your grandparents has to be Jewish, but under a special dispensation. And it's incredible how it worked. They came to Israel, they landed, they went through a nominal conversion ceremony, and then they were treated like Olim, like any other Olim. They got all the zchuyot, all the privileges from the Ministry of Absorption, and of course the Jewish Agency took really good care of them with special absorption centers and so on. The basis for them coming was a decision that was made by the Ministry of Interior after interviews to decide that they in fact were what was called Zera Yisrael, the seed of Israel. And it was done primarily based on patrimonial descent. You know, they had to prove that they had some kind of a relationship. And some 3,000 were put on the list and eventually got to Israel. I was involved with Jewish Healthcare International under the leadership of Steve Kuttner. We screened those people before they got to Israel. We did a medical screening so that their conditions were known to the people in Israel. In some cases, we had ambulances waiting on the tarmac to treat them. Well, there was a final big, a whole plane was chartered, and they got to Israel, and they said, okay, Shachianu, we're finished. only problem is that there were thousands of people left in Ethiopia with relatives who were already in Israel. And those relatives kept clamoring and saying, we deserve to come, our mothers and fathers and grandchildren and so on deserve to come here as well. A lot of questions about Jewishness, not Jewishness, but I must confess, I think we're beyond that. The government of Israel has spoken, and here we have people who very much want to come to Israel, who claim they are Jewish, and they're sitting in refugee camps, living on 5 cents a day, some of them having been sat there for 15 or 16 or 17 years. In 2015, the Israeli government said, we're going to allow them to come to Israel, but they didn't allocate any money or put in place any plans to make that happen. In August of 2016, the government made a decision to bring these people to Israel with a very, very specific set of commitments, a time schedule, budget. The Jewish Agency said that they would support them in getting them to Israel and support them when they are in Israel. That was in August, and the Aliyah was supposed to start in October or November. To date, there has been absolutely none. Absolutely none. These people don't have advocates. The only advocates they have are their relatives. And what can I tell you? Their relatives are poor, uneducated, and black. So you don't hear about them and you don't see about them. 3 weeks ago, there was a hearing in the Knesset. There are 3 Knesset members in Israel who are Ethiopian and come from Ethiopia, and they held a hearing. And in the hearing, it was very clear that the Ministry of Interior had done absolutely nothing. They couldn't interview people in Ethiopia because they didn't have appropriate office space, they claimed. You could interview people in tents too, or on the street, or who knows where, hotel rooms. There were 2 reports of that session at the Knesset, one in the Times of Israel, one in Haaretz. I read both of them, and what can I say? My heart just went out to these people, and I concluded that we need to do something. And so I'm starting all by myself a grassroots effort to put pressure on the government of Israel, pressure coming both from the United States and from Israel, to do what they committed themselves to do, no more and no less. And so that entails, 1, implementing the decision that was made. So that means that 1,300 people should be brought to Israel by the end of 2017. Finishing or really starting the registration process, and nobody knows how many. There are estimates of as many as 9,000, but until we finish the registration process, we won't know how many there really are. So that the rest of those people should be brought to Israel, even possibly in this year, but certainly in next year. There are those people who've been involved with Ethiopia for a long time, who want to set up a social service network in Ethiopia, in Addis and in Gondar. Gondar is the city where most of these people in the surrounding areas where they come from, in the northern part of the country. In the past, there were substantial social service arrangements, food distribution, kindergartens, synagogues, all kinds of other things. The Jewish Agency's position is we're not doing that anymore. It's very expensive. The place to do social services is in Israel. And the objective should be to bring these people to Israel as quickly as possible. Those that don't qualify, and I'm sure there are going to be many, there are 50 million other people like them in Ethiopia, and that's got to be the responsibility of the Ethiopian government. So we need to clearly distinguish who's in which camp and to move on. There are 17 families, I'm told, that will be coming to Israel in mid-May. None of them are from this new list. They're all old people that were on previous lists. To date, there has been nobody registered as yet. You have to ask, why hasn't it happened? You know, there's no outside pressure. But I would say there are 3 reasons. One is bureaucratic malfeasance. The second is this continuing question, well, these really aren't Jews, so we really shouldn't do anything for them. And third, racism, classism, every other kind of ism that you can point to for people who don't have any advocates and don't have rich casino owners helping them to, pushing to have something done for them. Before too long, we will have a website up. The objective is to get people to sign petition and to write letters to the Prime Minister of Israel to say, let's get this process on the road. It's not a question of raising money, it's just a question of a little bit of political pressure. Can we succeed? Who knows, but I just don't know how to do it any other way except to try. And so that's what we're all about. We're going to be trying to get to all the synagogues in the Atlanta area, to Jewish press around the country and around the world, to try to make a little noise and to see if that noise can be heard in the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem. I'm more than happy to answer your questions or to get you involved in any way, shape, or form that's possible.
Right.